Hey guys, at the end, spoken label back in the house. Yeah, you can see I'm wrapped up to the gills tonight because it's bloody freezing. Which is ironic because we're heading over to Oxford today, and the young lady who stood on the other side of his camera, I'll introduce in a minute, he stood there wearing a lot less bloody clothing than I am, and I don't know how she's not freezing. So we've got a fantastic, our returning friend today, Lily Massey. Now we're the same for Lily. We've not spoke for about 4 or 5 years, have we?
No, no, it's been it's been quite a long time.
Yeah, but I love this getting spoken in, but get guests back on. That's what your ages and everybody's a friend anyway. Even if we've not spoke to you for say about 4 or 5 years. And now, if people want to backtrack, last time Lily was with us, it was back in 2016. No, not 16, 19. And you just telling me you reckon what you were 16 at the time, weren't you? If my memory's correct.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been it's strange kind of thinking back, like especially over that 5 years. It feels like a lot has happened, a lot has changed, just
Yeah,
generally, and then personally as well.
yeah. Now, there's a lot of ground to cover today with Lily because people might guess she's a busy young lady and she's a fantastic writer. I'm going to say that anyway before we start because she is. Now, last time we spoke with Lily, you just become Staffordshire Young Poet Laureate, hadn't you? So, do you want to? Can you
Yes.
remember much about that? Or has it been from 5 years ago? What your experiences like were with that?
Yeah, I mean it was incredible. It really got me into poetry more than I kind of had been into poetry before. I wrote poetry here and there, but being in that position and like having the community there and going to poetry events and kind of exchanging poems with other people and talking more about poetry just generally, like that year really allowed me to grow as a poet, and kind of develop my writing style. But it also, I mean, yeah, allowed me to meet a lot of people, but also just got me into poetry overall. I feel like maybe that was the launching pad for me carrying on writing and to where I am today, really.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you on that because I've been, even though I don't always have guests on for gaps, sometimes I keep an eye on their career. That's what I did with you straight away here. So always I didn't don't brain to bring you back on again, definitely. Now, obviously, I know at the time, obviously, remember talking to you before, like certainly you work, obviously, you've told me before then, pre to this, where you were a very sporadic poet, weren't you? But you were massively influenced growing up
Mm.
by the romantic poets, weren't you, as well?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And yeah, I still am to, yeah, not to my shame. I do love them. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think I don't know what it is. I just feel like with romantic poetry particularly, it's that kind of like I feel like one reads something and it just kind of strikes that connection. It feels very kind of you always have this visceral feeling of I really enjoy this or I really kind of relate to this, and I think that's what I kind of get from it, and that's obviously kind of part of the reason why it infused into my writing. Um, yeah, I guess my inspiration doesn't wander that far.
No, man, no. If you're gonna be influenced, I am always opinion of it. You're influenced by the good writers, so that's fair enough. Fair enough to me that completely.
Yeah.
Now, you since obviously the last time we've talked, I know you put two books out. We're going to talk about them in a
Hmm.
moment, but do you want to tell people first of all, you've been obviously influenced by coming on Spoken Label now. You set your own podcast up, haven't you? As it yourself called All Words Are Free.
Yes.
So, and that's on
Yes.
Substack as well. So now, obviously, first of all,
Yeah.
then, why Substack?
So, okay. Long story short, it was actually so I set up a website called All Words Are Free When the Birds Sigh, which essentially like has like essays on and different written things and a lot of poetry. And then my friend said to me, "Oh, why don't you set up a Substack page?" Or like, why did you, go through the rigmarole of creating your own website when this is not a short story, um, of your own website when you could just use something like Substack. And so I set up All Words Are Free, which is the podcast, and I've been fancying doing something sort of spoken and like audio sort of commentary stuff for a time. And I finally just kind of took the leap. I spent a good time, like setting it up in a cafe, really excited. It's just sort of grown from there. I'm on episode 20 this week, so it's still
Good.
new, but yeah, I don't know, I love it, and I like kind of talking into the void of it, and yeah.
So, same for me as well. Like it's I think sometimes it's when you get into this and they think they say the bug bites. There's no stopping you because, like I said before to you, I'm on next year, 2025 is my 10th year anniversary as doing starting this podcast,
Mm,
and it just like goes like that. It really, really does.
it
And
does, yeah.
yeah, so have you found then? Obviously, you said before you've done 20 episodes now. Then has your
Mm.
approach to doing this podcast changed?
It has, in a way. I think that when I first started, I scripted the episodes because it was just me talking on a particular topic. I scripted the episodes very heavily. And I recorded a couple, and it just didn't really feel right because it felt quite forced. So now I kind of just make a few bullet points, get sources together, whatever, whatever. Um, and I just talk and just kind of go with it. I guess I'm kind of lucky in the way that I just I can just kind of give that spiel and just kind of go run on a theme. And I've had some people in for like interview style ones as well, which has been quite nice to kind of yeah, broaden the scope of what I do. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good skill, I think, when you get a chance to like to bring guests onto your podcast. Because I think it's a good skill to do, just be confident enough to go and talk for 15, 20 minutes on by yourself. But
Mm,
bringing a guest in, I think it's a different ball game altogether. Respect you. Definitely. I've really enjoyed it. So keep it
oh,
going. Okay.
thank you.
Now,
Thank
obviously, book-wise, which we're here for today, really, is to date
you.
you've done two books. I'm going to hold my hands up. I've not read the first book, Work in Progress, but I can guess what that work was about. That was when most of your work over the time you did Poet Laureate, wasn't it, I presume?
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And obviously now we're here today to talk about your new book, which it took you 5 years to write. Yes, and as I said before to you,
Mm,
I've got a history of 5 years of books, so I know exactly where I am with that. And the book's called My Fire, which you've sent over to me, and I've
yes.
read. It's been an excellent book. It really, really has. So obviously, then, best way to start in this is tell us about the journey from work in progress to My Fire, because I feel this has been a massive we're taking 5 years for you to do this book. You're probably a very different
Mhm.
writer now and person to what you were over my work in progress.
Yes, 100%. I think that one of my primary one of the primary drivers to actually putting out a second collection um was the fact that I just felt so different as a writer, and that the first collection didn't really represent my writing anymore. And I think that having this new collection out there, it just feels more true to me at this time. And I'm sure that, in the future I'll feel differently again. But I think, as you say, it's like you're always developing as a writer. And I think, especially over 5 years, I've had a lot of different experiences. I've matured, and 16 to 21 is quite a sort of, I suppose, developmental change. And I think that, yeah, it's been a little journey. There's a few poems in there from kind of still like 2 or 3 years ago, but I think that even between those and the stuff that was in work in progress, you can still see the kind of I think more kind of certainty in my writing as well, and that I felt more sure of what I wanted to say. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I'm going to come on to that in a minute. So, but I do agree completely. I've really, really enjoyed reading this yesterday and today, certainly. So, what we always do when I get new books given me to read, I like to do a bit of a breakdown with the author, and we're going to pick out 7 or 8 poems to go through in a few moments. And I'm kind to Lily because I've told her which ones we're going to be. I'm not cruel enough to just dump it on yourself. But I'm interested in learning first of all, before we do that, why My Fire as the title?
So, the original title was going to be development or developing. it was up in the air.
Mm.
Um, which from work in progress, so the whole concept of work in progress, kind of as you kind of got from that and kind of had hinted at, is that it was very much kind of at the beginning, not quite sure. Some poems were unfinished. It was that kind of experimental kind of giving it a go sort of vibe of being 16. And then the original idea for what was development or developing is that it was like my next stage as a writer in the way that I've changed, I've learned things, I've experienced things. And so these poems represent that kind of next step in my life. But I know that things are going to carry on and move and mature from there, hence like developing. So it's not like done. But I called it My Fire because I think that while so developing is actually a section of the book, so I thought splitting it up into sections was quite nice. But I think My Fire really represents where I am at the moment in kind of emotionally with like relationships to other people, not necessarily romantic, just generally. But also I think that I feel more certain now in what I want to do and kind of the path forward, just career wise and general life aspirations. And so I think My Fire kind of represents the drive and the passion for that or towards that.
Brilliant answer. Yeah, you can see it from this book straight away. So, as I hinted before, we're going to do a deep dive now, and I love doing deep dives because so I want to learn first of all about addiction, which is the first poem in the book. And I absolutely loved the first line here. Who are you but the ghosts to my freedoms? And then you later on, straight after, went another line I loved as well. Where are you outside the pink clouds of utopia? Which are really quite juxtapositions of lines. And it's a great start, this book, 'cause it really felt to me like the beginning of the journey. Was it always meant to be the
Yeah.
beginning of the journey of this book, of this poem?
I played around with the order quite a lot, but I think that addiction was definitely always one that I came back to kind of open the collection. And I think this was one of the older ones in the complete set. I wrote this kind of at the start of university or just before coming to university. So yeah, as I say, it is one of the older ones. Um, but it's definitely the beginning of the journey. Kind of as you say, it's that yeah, I suppose that stage of still being a bit uncertain, but there's kind of somewhere to grow from that, I think. And I think that was why I kind of wanted to put this one first.
Yeah, I've got to ask you about the line, 'cause this line about where are you outside the pink clouds of utopia? And I thought it's a great line. That where did that come from?
So when I was writing this poem, I kind of
Hmm.
wanted to so when I kind of try and get a nice image, and I really wanted a nice image in this, I do a little bit of research, and pink clouds were kind of something that was associated with addiction, like
Also, hmm.
as a state, as a
Hmm.
state of being, I guess, to put it that way. And the kind of utopia or like euphoria kind of thing is the idea of kind of the high of when you get something that you really want. And I think for me, addiction was very much about my kind of relationships with um, sort of certain things. I mean, I don't want to be too like thing because I don't know whether you can have like warnings or whatever for listeners. But
Oh,
basically, it was like
hang on.
my
Tell you what, trigger warning time. Okay, there, go for it. Okay.
yeah, kind of my kind of obsessive focus on different things like exercise and eating and that sort of realm of things, which I've kind of talked about before in poetry events and in my writing, because I think I find it important to talk about these things. And so that's kind of where this poem comes from, and that idea of also being obsessed with succeeding, which I definitely struggled with quite a bit, like especially, towards the end of like high school and moving up into university. And yeah, basically going back to the point, yeah, the pink clouds of utopia is very much the um yeah, that kind of joy that you experience when things kind of go right. Um, but the whole idea of like, where are you outside is that in the moment it feels wonderful, but once you step out of that and in the kind of normal day to day, it's not quite as it appears. I guess that's kind of where that line
Brilliant,
comes from.
brilliantly said. Yeah, and I agree with you. That's what I thought of that piece was indeed some great stuff. And that kind of leads on, I think, to the second poem I want to talk to you about, which comes, I think, one or two later, Busted Vinyl. Because that always stuck in my head because I'm old enough to remember the first wave of vinyl, and like it was like I loved the ending of it where you're going about my pupils are vibrating like busted vinyl, and again I felt it led quite well onto the addiction piece. Am I right with that?
Yes, yeah. Again, it was written at a similar time, and I think that if one was to really dissect like the kind of the style of the writing, or at least I can see it, I suppose, because I've written it, but there's certain poems that kind of sound kind of similar, or that similar frame of mind, and they were written about the same time, and Busted Vinyl and Addiction were written around a similar time. And yeah, Busted Vinyl is one of those where I kind of I don't know, every time I read it, I kind of remember performing it at different events or writing it. And it's kind of one of those, kind of one of my old classics. I don't know. I just I had to put it in because I don't know, I kind of have this nostalgia for it in a way.
No, it's a really good piece again. I think it works really well because that and there's a couple of pieces that I'm not going to cover out in the beginning of the book because it does follow a really good pattern in this book, and I think it tells a story in indirect ways. It moves along. Now, I really liked him as well. In fact, I liked all the book anyway before we start, but I did really enjoy Next and New Charm because I love the reference to a scratch on the pavement stone. It made me think of busted vinyl again then. And then like it's cloaked fear as roses, dash my hope with fractal blows. Again, really stark poetry, this one again. I'm guessing this was wrote a little bit later, wasn't it? But I can see
Mm.
the tension in this piece as well.
Yeah, so this was written a little bit later. And yeah, it's as you say, like slightly further on in the book. And yeah, it's funny. I really do remember writing this one, and a lot of my poetry kind of comes out of a momentary inspiration. And I'm very much, if I don't write it now, then it's never going to happen. So I have to just like get a notebook out and write it down. Um, and yeah, so I think this one was kind of fueled by that kind of height of emotion, which is perhaps why it's quite um, visceral in a way.
Yeah, it's good visuals. The visuals a very good word for quite a few poems in your book, actually. And it's a great example, that one. Uh, Honeysuckle Bride. This I probably had my
Mm,
favourite image in the full book, actually. This one, actually, was caught fish in my skirt.
yes,
I
yeah.
want to know with this, where, first of all, where did the idea for this poem come from? And how the heck did you come up with the image of caught fish in my skirt? Because that's just dazzling, that one.
Um, yeah, so this poem was actually inspired by a person who I will not name.
But
But no,
as I always say, they know who they are.
they know who. Maybe they don't, to be fair. But
That's
no,
probably for
no,
the
I'm
best then.
sure.
Probably for the best then.
Yeah, definitely. But yes, this was kind of yeah, this was inspired by a person. So that's kind of, I guess, where the emotion in it comes from. As far as the image comes in, I actually can't remember the like original there was definitely something that made me think of the whole like fish thing. Um, but sometimes I just kind of it's not very inspired and there's no method behind it. I just kind of come up with this like random image and just kind of put it in the poem and hope for the best, which isn't a
I
great
get that.
answer.
I get that.
Um,
So
but yeah, I guess yeah, that's kind of it.
yeah,
It's not very inspired, but yeah.
just read it. It's a great piece. Okay, so yeah, that visceral side of thing then moves on to home again, which I want to talk about next, because obviously, like you said, you've had
Yeah.
such a fantastic image of caught fish in my skirt there, and this next piece is it feels like it's home is where it hurts. At least it does to start with. Then talk about
Mm,
thoughts or memories. But then you completely throw me back on about Atlantis, which I wasn't expecting.
yeah.
So, okay, tell us about that then.
Yeah, so this poem was written for a it was a commission piece, um, sort of about the sense of home and particularly for Staffordshire, because that was kind of the anthology that it was written towards about kind of the local area. Um, and yeah, I think in this piece I kind of wanted to reflect the two sides of a place, that idea that there, so for example in your home, which is what I'm directly referring to here, it's that there's so much kind of nostalgia and joy and that sort of rose tinted kind of lens towards when somebody says about home. You know, home in itself is kind of this cozy sort of word. um but I think that also a lot of your kind of hardest moments, your kind of most intense emotions, you run home and you want to be, alone or whatever. And I think that home as, say, an actual building or a place, it houses so much of the best times and also the hardest times of your life. And I think that here I really wanted to kind of emulate that. And as far as Atlantis goes, I think that yeah, I guess childhood. I'm quite a nostalgic person, and my friends say this all the time that I like reminisce all the time. It's I don't know, maybe don't live in the present as much, but I think that yeah, but there's a kind of I think on childhood is kind of a very safe and kind of joyful time, and I think that that's kind of what I wanted to get out of this, or what I want people to when they read this get out of that
Yeah,
poem.
no, agree. I agree completely. Great stuff indeed. So, yeah, he then, I noticed this the further the book went along. After have obviously we talked about abstract image of fish in my skirt and then Atlantis. The next piece I want to ask you about movement. You're going on about sea angels, and again, it's like you can
Yeah.
see the way your style, your work, you're coming through the romantic side of your work coming through there. Because it definitely some of the pieces the further the book goes along. I'm not using the word abstract. It's not. It's all the more lyrical side of your work, I think. So, and I felt this poem, movement, was about a growth piece of some kind, probably about reckoning of life, the way your life was moving along. But again, I
Mm.
felt it was a good place in the book to put that. So, tell us next about movement.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. I think this poem is very much about that transition from kind of from an innocent idea of love to a kind of reckoning with what it could actually be. And also that kind of idea of losing people to move forward, and then finding people to move forward as well. Um, And yes, my I kind of try and emulate that very lyrical style of a lot of the poets that I like to read, and also novelists and anyone really who's kind of a creative in that way. And I think through this very kind of emotional, lyrical, and sometimes kind of abstract imagery, it I think it allows you to say more than with your words than just being very literal, and it kind of carries the emotion with it more easily. and maybe allows you to kind of separate yourself from it slightly as well, which I guess is somewhat what happens when I write. It allows you to step away slightly, but also get everything down and get those emotions out, which is one of the reasons why I love writing poetry,
Yeah, no,
really.
there's a love in this book, and yeah, and I agree with you completely with that. Yeah, and I think the next piece I want to show about follows on quite nicely from this. So I was like, he said, forward talk. There's a movement in the next piece where you've done about she once spoke, which is obviously clearly about
Mm.
it's a movement, another movement piece about the passing of life and how your life experiences touch you. But there's a lines in it where you
Hmm.
said she once spoke of the things beyond her reach, the people she ought to know who left long ago, and that's incredibly sad. But I got tell us
Mm.
about that then.
Yeah, so this is very much about the day-to-day passing of life, and it is sad. It is yeah, it's meant to be sad. I think that a lot of my poems are kind of emotional or sad. The happiness element doesn't come in too much, but it does. So, but yes, no, this poem is kind of, yeah, it's meant to be very solemn, and I think it's as much about um kind of it's as much about a woman wanting to be something and do something, and she's not able to because others are stopping her because of, what she's supposed to do instead, but also about that sadness of being quite alone in that and feeling very isolated. And I think this, yeah, is kind of just that idea of trying to be something, but it's not quite who you want to be, and then you lose things as a consequence of that.
Yeah, nicely said. No, I agree. I agree with you. It's got a very there is a tragedy in that piece, but yeah, anyway, let's move on. Okay, stitching. And it's another
Yes.
one. I know there's another, was more water. I just begin to notice this book. And I read my notes here, there's water imagery a lot in your pieces as well, isn't there? Because this next one's
Yeah.
going about kingfishers.
Kingfisher.
Yes, I've just realised then.
Honestly, I just realized it too. Maybe I have a thing, but I'm an Aquarius, I guess.
Yeah,
Whether that's an air sign, but yeah.
you can certainly see you like the water. That's all I'm going to say there. So let me read out the extract that I really liked it on this. Tiptoeing across my vision, stalking like the kingfisher, along the shores of my memory, reflecting a man and I won't read it anymore, right? But it's beautifully told again, this. So this, again, is like another journey piece. But where did the idea for stitching come from?
I'm just reading it. Apologies.
we, as you can say with spoken label, we are always organised, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Aha, okay, okay. So stitching, as in like stitching up your heart, is kind of the idea that I had. Like stitching up your heart because you feel not that it's breaking, but that it's kind of it needs more love, I guess. But also stitching in the way of kind of I'm trying to think of the right way to kind of express it, but like, say if you like decorate something, so like a blanket, and you like stitch on like a little, I don't know, bow or something. It's that kind of side as well. So it's stitching to heal, but also stitching to decorate, I think.
Yeah, nice.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I guess just someone changing by knowing somebody else, for the better and also for the worse or not so good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, okay. But that's what you think you look when you I think when you look back at books sometimes afterwards, you pick up meanings you don't always necessarily realise at the time. And did you find
Mm.
this with this full book when you're looking back at it now, you're thinking, oh, I didn't realise that with that, and for example, with that sometimes you caught yourself out a bit there.
Yeah, I think that as I kind of briefly mentioned before, a lot of the time I just have to write a poem like straight away, just write it, get that emotion out, and then it's never seen again until I do something like a collection. Um, and I don't tend to really edit my poems, which I guess is like I don't I will, but a lot of the time I kind of keep the original, maybe changing a couple words here and there or a couple phrases. And I think that when I look back on stuff, especially after a period of time, you can really, or at least I can kind of sense how I was feeling at that moment. And I think it's interesting to see the change in my style of writing as well. And yeah, I definitely kind of pick things up that I didn't really realize at the time, which may be my kind of A-level English lit brain like turning on. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I get agree with you. You do. It's sometimes when you analyze things, the second analysis after a distance makes a big difference of it. And I think
Mm,
the last piece in the book, I think, is really poignant, actually, homegrown. And obviously, we said before when we talked about the first piece in the book, obviously, like I said all the way back when you were talking about, obviously, your addiction. Homegrown, I think,
mm,
feels like you brought the book full circle to me. And I was like, I loved bits of like it. Another day across the tracks in the mottled grey sky, dashing across the backdrop like a razor, which is heavy. Place of my home, my birth, small in the distance, and like, did you know when you wrote that poem it was going to be the last poem in the book, or did it come naturally during your reorganization of the book?
I think it came naturally when I kind of put it together. I never like I didn't write any of these pieces with the intention of it going in an anthology.
Hmm.
Um, when I was putting something together, I just kind of picked the ones that I wanted that felt representative of me now. I think with Homegrown, it was always going to be the final one. You know, I toyed with the opening, but I knew that I wanted this as yeah, as the last piece because it did feel very full circle. And I think it's also one of the kind of softer, calmer, kind of lighter pieces. I didn't want to end on something very heavy or very emotional. I wanted it to feel quite peaceful, and that is how I felt when I wrote this. You know, I wrote it. I mean, I literally was on a train, um,
Ah, brilliant.
and yeah, it's I don't know. I think you know, living away from home now, you know, as we've mentioned, I'm based in Oxford and, you know, born in Stoke-on-Trent. And I think that I do have this kind of really, I really kind of value that sense of identity that I associate with being from Stoke. And I think that I don't want to lose that. So it kind of felt nice to reflect on home despite you know being where I am, being part of the development that led to the collection, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
completely agree with you on that. So it's a fantastic book, like I said. I've said it about four times now. I'll say it five times. It's great, right? Now, obviously, now that book's done, I always like to ask, what do you have plans next? But I know that from speaking to you in advance and
Uh,
doing my clever research, you've got not one, you've got two novels on the go, haven't you, at the moment as well? So, is there anything you want to reveal about them?
oh, that's a good question. There's much I want to reveal. No, I think yeah. So poetry wise, I'm kind of quite promiscuous to use like a weird
Oh,
word, but like I
so-
I kind of I write it kind of every so often when I feel inspired, which is bad because I do love it. But yeah, my core kind of creative focus at the moment on my novels. Um, so they're the first and the second of the same series. So the first novel is called Suitable Company, which is currently going through some revisions. I'm kind of adding bits in and changing about the order and revising just the style of writing as well, because the bulk of it was written during lockdown and my writing style has changed since then. And I wanted to, kind of similar with the poetry, I wanted to put what what gets out there, however, whatever form that may be, publishing, bookshelves, who knows, that's a future endeavor. I want it to encapsulate me as a writer now. So that's Suitable Company. It's essentially a murder mystery set in 1920s England, North,
Ooh.
because we have to. Um, And yeah, it's as much a piece of crime or mystery fiction as it is literary. I really wanted it to say something and have that lyrical element, as in my poetry. And yeah, and then A Shadow Before the Sun is the other novel, which is a sequel, which helped me to develop the characters quite a bit actually, which again is one of the reasons why I went back to the first one because there's inconsistencies in the characters that I didn't like.
Yeah.
But the characters have grown alongside me, which is quite nice.
But well, fingers crossed for that. So I'm not going to ask you when it's going to get released yet, because with it still been in work of progress. But do you anticipate it being out some point over the next couple of years, do you hope?
I hope so. That would I would love that if anyone wants to contact me about
Get in touch.
publishing, that would be great. Um,
No
but
taker
yeah,
up.
yeah, I would really like to yeah, get them out there because yeah, I think there's stuff in there that I kind of want to say that I don't think can necessarily be said properly in something short form. Um, and I love the characters deeply, so
Sounds
yeah.
good. You can tell. You can tell. Good luck with that. Definitely keeps informed. Okay. Now,
Thank you.
obviously, before we go into the plugin side of things with the social medias, I know you write a lot of non-fiction nowadays as well, don't you? So how does that compare to your fiction and your poetry?
Yeah, so my nonfiction is so I do kind of longer form pieces. So these would be kind of essay style or article style things. And then I do like little short kind of thought pieces, I call them, as well. And yeah, so these tend to talk about kind of social issues or science. So I write for a publication in Oxford, a science publication called The Oxford Scientist. And so I literally write, quite kind of scientific articles about all manner of different things. But then my nonfiction on the Substack, particularly, yeah, is much more, talk about kind of gender issues, or I do book reviews, or politics and things like that. Just to kind of, I don't know, I have a lot of interests, and I think that it's important to kind of share opinions and start conversations, which is the whole idea of All Words Are Free, the podcast in general. Um, I think, yeah, I want to kind of get people talking about these things because it's important to do that.
Agreed with you completely. Good luck with that. Definitely. I've been enjoying your podcast and that so far. I've been reading on it. So people wonder, yeah, I'm on Substack as well. So, but yeah, great stuff. Okay, time for the hard work's now over. So where can people get hold of your books and really?
Yes, so my both of my books, so A Work in Progress and My Fire, are available on Amazon at the moment. But My Fire will in January be going up on other kind of God, what's the word? Like online book
Platforms.
platforms.
Platforms, yes.
Yes, that'll be going
Available.
on other things, but at the moment, yeah, it's just available on Amazon. Um,
And
yeah, that,
where can people get hold of you on social media then, if they wish to?
yes, yes. So my Instagram is Lily __ Massey because Lily _ Massey was taken. Um, and then obviously my Substack as well. So that is All Words Are Free, which is all lowercase, all one word. And yeah, I think that's definitely the kind of core hub of my writing, which would be amazing to yeah, it'd be amazing to kind of see people there and get people in the comments kind of starting those conversations.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again for this part one, Lily. Been a pleasure. Been great. You see, it just shows you don't need to person for a couple of years. You catch right up in 40 minutes. So absolutely loved it. So we should be back, everybody, in two shakes of the dice. When I'm looking forward to, I'm interested, Lily, one thing before we go on this, because it's rare I see someone on the podcast who talks with their hands as much as I do. Do you do that all the time, do you?
I do, yeah. I'm very see now. Oh gosh, now I'm thinking about it. I won't use them. Um,
Oh, don't worry about it. Listen, I do it
but
all the time.
no,
So,
I will. But yeah, no, I use my hands like ridiculously. It's actually awful. It's like I'll be like waving all about. But yeah, it helps. You know, helps get the meaning
yeah,
across.
it's part of the who you are, as I always say. Definitely of it. So,
Yeah,
sorry to embarrass
absolutely.
you. I was just spotted that then. So,
No, no, it's yeah.
right, everybody. I'm going to, Lily's gone bright red now, so I can take a break for 2 minutes. And we'll shut back shortly, guys.